Hi, friends. So I was looking at the story of the Last Supper. The Last Supper they had before Jesus' crucifixion. And I was looking more into that. And mainly about Judas, the one that betrayed him. We all know the story of Judas, right? Well, we think we do. And he during the Last Supper, Jesus tells his disciples, he's eating with his disciples, and he tells them, one of you are going to betray me, and ends up being Judas, right? But if we look at John 13:27, it says, as soon as Judas took the bread, Satan entered into him. Satan entered into Judas. Wow. So Jesus told him, whatever you're about to do it quickly. And then if we look at John 13:2, it says the evening meals was in progress and the devil had already prompted Judas to betray Jesus. A lot of times we can't tell the difference between if it's our thoughts or if it's Satan's thoughts. And this is a perfect example of Judas couldn't tell the difference if it's his thoughts or Satan's thoughts. And the reason how you know if it's your thought, Jesus' thought, or your thought, God's thought, or Satan's thought is if it aligns with the scripture. That's how you know the difference between the devil's thoughts and God's thoughts, if it aligns with the scripture. And you have to be able to read the scripture to know that. So it said Satan entered into him. Wow. John 13:27. As soon as Judas took the bread, Satan entered into him. And then it says, the evening meal was in progress and the devil already prompted Judas into betraying Jesus. A lot of times, even for us, we can't tell the difference between when we have like negative thoughts. We can't tell if it's from Satan or if it's our thought or if it's God's thought. And a lot of times Satan wants us to rely on our own thoughts, to rely on our own emotions, but we're supposed to go based off the scripture. What does the scripture say? He would love for us not to trust the Lord and not the word and go based off our own feelings, our own thoughts. Even in the scripture says, it says the heart is deceitful above all things. Who can trust it? The heart is deceitful above all things. Who can trust it? We can't even trust our heart. Wow. So he wants us to trust our heart, trust our emotions, and trust our thoughts over the words. And we can't do that. We should not be doing that, because it contradicts it. So Satan loves to put like a little negative thoughts in our mind, even for us, like, you're not good enough, you messed up again, you're not successful, whatever it might be, to give us all these negative thoughts. And that's Satan's thoughts because it doesn't align with the scripture. That's crazy. Wow. And then later on, after Judas turned him in, he told Jesus his location, he later regretted it. He regret that he turned against him. And so if we look at Matthew 27:4, it says, Judas said, I have sinned, he said, for I have betrayed an innocent blood. He felt so regretful for betraying Jesus because he was an innocent blood. He was nothing but kind to him, loving to him, and he turned him in for some money. That is so sad. So he started to regret betraying him. So if we think about, even originally, if we think about sin, where does sin come from? When we think about sin, we think about, sin comes from, this is why we need to start going live on TikTok. I don't have that many to go live, so you have to make sure that we're sharing, subscribing, and stuff like that, so we can go live to do this, because I want to be able to ask you questions. On YouTube I can, but here I want to be able to ask you guys things like this so we can engage, so we can have like a live Bible study. So for example, where does sin come from, right? And most of us will say sin comes from not being obedient, living in the flesh, not doing what we're supposed to do, not living in the word, something like that, right? But if you read the scripture to see where the sin comes from, it says that sin is generational. Wow. Sin is brought down to us through generations. If we look at Exodus 20, 20 verses 5, it says, sins of the parents will be passed down to the children's, to the third and fourth generation. So we were born into sin, right? We're born into sin. We are born into sin. That is crazy. That's so crazy that we are born into sin, and like we don't even realize that. We think it's because of our own doing, but we are already born as sinners. All of us are, even me, all of us, right? Because we're humans, we're not perfect. We're not perfect to us, at least, right? And even the story of the woman who was committing adultery, remember that story? We talked about it before. So there was a woman who's in the middle of adultery, in the act, and they brought her out, and they said to Jesus, Jesus, this woman is in the middle of committing adultery. The law says that we're supposed to stone her, but what do you think we should do? So they were trying to trick him. They were trying to put him in a hard spot. They were trying to put him in a hard spot and say, the law says to sin her. This law says to stone her. So what did you say to Jesus? And Jesus was writing on the ground, and he came back up and he said, he who hasn't sinned, throw the first stone. That was a mic drop. That was so good. I was like, really? That was so good. He who hasn't sinned, throw the first stone, because we're all sinners. And they all backed away like, oh, that's a good comeback. I had nothing to say because I just sinned 2 minutes ago. I just sinned 5 minutes ago. You know? So they knew they're sinners too. So they walked away. They walked away. That was a good mic drop from Jesus. That was so good. But if you look at, let's look to see, like, what does the Romans say about righteous? Was there anyone that was righteous in the Bible? You know, if we look at Romans 3 verses 10, it says, no one is righteous, not even one. No one is righteous, not even one. Wow. Wow, wow. And then also, if we look at Romans 3 verses 22 to 25, it says, we are considered righteous when we have faith in Jesus Christ, no matter who we are. So what makes us righteous in God's eye is when we have faith in Jesus Christ. So we are already considered righteous. That's why it also says you're made in the image of God. We're already righteous. We're already good enough. I'm already loved. I'm already chosen. I know who I am. I know what you've spoken. So we're already righteous, and we don't even realize that. We're always dealing with this, negative self-talk and these negative thoughts that we have, and intrusive thoughts that we have, and we listen to it, receive it. We got to reject it. Because it's not true. It's not what the scripture says about us. Let's read it again. So Romans 3 verses 22 to 25. We are considered righteous when we have faith in Jesus Christ, no matter who we are, right? No matter who we are, no matter what your past is, everybody has a past. It's okay. Everybody makes mistakes. That's part of being human. He knows that about us. Even the scripture says, I knew you before your mother's womb. So he knows us already. He knows what we're going to do. He knows we're going to make mistakes. We're human. We're human. And everyone commits sin. That's we're all sinners. We can't help it. And we're not perfect. But if we look at, let's look to see, who did God consider perfect? Did he consider anybody perfect in his eyes? So if we look at Genesis 6 verses 9, it says, there are the generations of Noah. Noah was just a great man and perfect in his generation, and Noah walked with God. So in God's eye, Noah was considered perfect because he walked with him, because of his faith. He was considered perfect. So when we have faith, we are considered perfect. We are considered righteous. Wow. And then also, if we look at 1 Kings 15 verses 5, it says, because David did that which was right in the eyes of the Lord, and turned not aside from anything that he commanded in all of his days. So basically, David did anything that the Lord commanded, anything the Lord asked him to do, he did it, and he was considered right in the Lord's eye. So he was considered righteous. And we are considered righteous as well if we have that belief, the same belief, and we walk with God. That is so beautiful. That is so beautiful. And then if we look at Hebrews 10 verses 14, it says, for by that one offering he forever made perfect those who are being made holy. So when you are righteous, when you believe in Jesus Christ, right, you are made perfect forever. You're considered perfect in his eyes forever. So when the devil tells us in our mind, the same way the devil entered in Judas, and he prompted him to betray Jesus, it said. He entered into Judas, it said. The same way, if he gives us those negative thoughts, we have to make sure that we fight back with the scripture and say what is actually true. And we do that by knowing the scripture. That's why it's so important. That's why I always advise to at least know 3 to 5 scriptures. So your go-to scriptures to help you that resonates best with you. So we are made perfect in his eyes. That is so, so beautiful. So it's important for us not to trust our minds and our thoughts and go based off feelings. We have to go based off the word, because the devil will love for us to go based off feelings. He will love for us to go based off what we think or we hear, how we feel. But the scripture, it says in Jeremiah 17:9, it says, the heart is deceitful above all things. Who can trust it? And this is so true. It also goes with, the scripture also says, a man is as he thinks in his heart. So whatever you think, which I choose to think what the scripture says about me, that's what I go based off. I don't go based off the negative thoughts. So a man, which is a spirit, is as he thinks in his heart. So whatever positive things that you say about yourself, that's what you become. That's how you act. That's how you are receiving people. That's how you pick the people that you think you deserve. It's because what you think you're worth and your value. How is the scripture teaching us about value? Isn't it so amazing? It teaches you about self-worth. It teaches you about everything. Finance, how to act, how to behave, how to love each other, how to forgive, everything that you need. It is a way to life. It really is a way to life. It's like a guide. It literally changed my life. That's why I started doing the YouTube channel and spreading it, because I was like, how do we not know that it is the way to life? It solves every problem. It solves every problem. So amazing. And a lot of times when we have these negative thoughts and we can't tell the difference between, is this Satan's thoughts? Is this my thought? Is this God's thought? It confuses us. It confuses us. When you're confused, you know it's not from God, because because it says God is not the author of confusion. He's not the author of confusion. If you're confused, if you say, for example, you're in a relationship that's not healthy for you, you're always arguing, whatever it might be, right? It's toxic. It's not good for your mental health. And there's a lot of confusion. That is not from God, because God is he's not an author of confusion. I'm not saying disagree every now and then. I'm talking about something that affects your mental health, that makes you depressed, that makes you hate life, that makes you hate everything. If it changes you as a person in a negative way and you don't recognize yourself, that's not for you. That's not for you. So if we look at 1 Corinthians 14:33, it says, but the scripture says, God is not the author of confusion. So he likes to confuse us with our negative thoughts. The devil likes to confuse us with our negative thoughts. He likes to confuse us with our emotions. But the scripture already told us, the heart is deceitful above all things. So if we already know that, and then it also says that God is not the author of confusion. So we put those two together, we know it's not from him. Not from him. If I get anxiety or worry, I know it's not from God, because it says cast your care onto him. It says that he's always with us. So why would I have any fear? He walks beside me, so why would I have any fear when it comes to anything in life? You shouldn't have that. That's from the devil. He wants you to think that even when you feel alone, that's the negative thought right there. I'm alone. I don't have any friends. I don't have any family. You feel alone, right? But the scripture says, I will never leave you nor forsake you. It contradicts the scripture, so that means it's not true. If it contradicts the scripture or it doesn't align with it, I don't believe it. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. I think a lot of times the problem that we have is we walk by sight and not by faith. And the scripture says we're supposed to walk by faith and not by sight. You know? So when we have faith in Jesus Christ and we walk by faith, we're going to have a great life. And it also says that on 2 Corinthians 5 verses 7. It says, but the scripture says, walk by faith, not by sight. Wow. So it's important for us not to trust our feelings and what we think, things like that. What I do when I have moments where you have like negative emotions, say you're talking to someone or where I might be, I pause. I stay silent because I have to think. Because you have to think about, what do I want to say? I want to live in the spirit. I don't want to live in the flesh. You know, I want to be an example. And I have to remind myself the heart is deceitful above all things. You know, I mean, if it's someone that's like trying to trigger you, then of course that's when you create boundaries and things like that. But I just love how when I found that out, I was like mind blown. I was like, the devil entered in Judas. He couldn't even tell the difference between whose voice he was hearing. He couldn't tell, is this my thoughts? Is this God's thoughts? Is the devil entered in Judas? He entered into him and he prompted him to betray Jesus. He could see, I don't want that to happen to us, so where we have so many negative thoughts that we end up listening to it. It's the devil trying to prompt us out of our destiny, out of our purpose. And you can't give him that power. And the way you know that is if you read the scripture. You have to read the scripture and to know what aligns. Okay? All right. Bye, friends.